The silent vacuum of space concealed the Zarnak infiltration ships as they approached Eltheron, a desolate moon orbiting at the edge of the Delta Star system. Their stealth technology rendered them invisible to most sensors, but Captain Tara Nash felt something was off. She stood at the viewport of the Fang unit's outpost, her weathered face reflecting against the reinforced glass as she gazed out at the cratered surface bathed in the eerie light of the distant sun. "Something's coming," she muttered, more to herself than to Staff Sergeant Monroe, who stood beside her. Monroe, a veteran of 3 interplanetary conflicts, knew better than to dismiss the captain's instincts. "Perimeter sensors are clear, but I'll double the night watch anyway." Tara nodded, her short-cropped hair barely moving with the gesture. At 42, she had spent over 2 decades with the Human Alliance Marine Corps, the last 5 commanding the elite Fang unit, 24 Marines known throughout the Alliance for their extreme survival training and unorthodox combat methods. "Wake me if anything changes," she said, turning away from the viewport. "Even if it's just a feeling." The Fang unit's outpost on Eltheron wasn't much to look at. A series of prefabricated structures connected by reinforced tunnels, designed to withstand the moon's harsh temperature fluctuations and occasional electromagnetic storms. What made it valuable was its strategic position. From here, Alliance vessels could monitor the activities of the Zarnak Empire, a warlike species that had been encroaching on human territory for the past decade. As Tara made her way to her quarters, she passed Private Rel running combat simulations in the training room. At 19, Rel was the youngest member of the unit, but what she lacked in experience, she made up for in ingenuity. "Still up, Private?" Tara asked. Rel snapped to attention. "Yes, Captain. Working on some modifications to the standard hand-to-hand takedown sequences for low-gravity environments." Tara smiled. It was precisely this kind of adaptability that had made her select Rel for Fang unit despite her youth. "Carry on. Just don't miss breakfast. Monroe's cooking tomorrow." "God help us all," Rel replied with a grin. Tara continued to her quarters, unaware that within hours, everything would change. The attack came at 300 hours, during the darkest period of Eltheron's 30-hour cycle. The first indication of trouble was not an explosion or alarm, but silence, the sudden cessation of the constant background hum of the outpost's communications array. Tara woke instantly, years of combat training bringing her to full alertness in seconds. She reached for her sidearm as her quarters' emergency lighting flickered on, casting the room in a dim red glow. Her comm unit crackled. "Captain, we've got multiple breaches in sectors 3 through 7. Monroe's voice was tense but controlled. "They've somehow bypassed the perimeter alarms. They're inside." "Casualties?" Tara asked, already pulling on her combat gear. "None yet. They're not engaging. They're accessing the armory." Tara froze. The armory contained not only their standard-issue pulse rifles and explosives, but also prototype weapons being field-tested by Fang unit. "Lock it down. Authorization Nash Zulu 94. Systems not responding. Captain, they've got some kind of override." Tara swore under her breath. "Battle stations. All personnel to defensive positions. I'm on my way." By the time Tara reached the command center, the situation had deteriorated further. The outpost's internal sensors showed multiple Zarnak infiltrators moving through the facility with purpose, avoiding direct engagement with her Marines. "They've cut external communications," Lieutenant Jax reported, his fingers flying over the console as he attempted to restore systems. "We're completely isolated." "What about the emergency beacon?" "Jammed. And Captain, they've emptied the armory. Every weapon, from sidearms to heavy ordnance, is gone." The realization hit Tara like a physical blow. Without weapons or communications, her unit was effectively neutralized. The Zarnak could now easily overrun them at their leisure. But something didn't add up. If the Zarnak wanted to eliminate Fang unit, why steal their weapons instead of simply attacking while the Marines slept? What's their current position? She demanded. There. Leaving, Jax replied, confusion evident in his voice. All hostiles are moving back toward their insertion points. Tara's mind raced. This wasn't a standard military tactic. This was something else. They want us helpless, she realized aloud. They want Alliance Command to find a dead outpost when communications eventually come back online. A psychological blow. The command center fell silent as her officers processed this. To be defeated without even the dignity of a fight would be devastating not just to Fang unit, but to Alliance morale as a whole. Tara straightened her shoulders, a slow smile spreading across her face. Captain, Monroe questioned, recognizing the expression. Assemble all personnel in the main hall, immediately. 10 minutes later, Tara stood before her unit. 24 faces looked back at her, expressions ranging from anger to concern to outright fear. They had all realized the gravity of their situation, stranded on a hostile moon, stripped of weapons, with an enemy force of unknown size likely preparing to finish them off. Listen up. Fangs, Tara began, her voice carrying the calm authority that had earned her respect throughout the Alliance. As of 3:17 hours, we have been engaged in what I'm officially designating as an advanced hand-to-hand combat training scenario. Confused murmurs rippled through the assembled Marines. The enemy believes they've neutralized us by taking our weapons, she continued. What they don't realize is that they've simply initiated Phase 3 of Fang Unit's Extreme Survival Protocol. There was no such protocol, of course, but Tara saw the spark of understanding begin to light in the eyes of her veterans. Monroe was already nodding slowly. For those of you who haven't experienced Phase 3 before, Tara continued, improvising. It's quite simple. We are now operating under the assumption that all conventional weapons are unavailable. Instead, we will utilize environmental adaptations, improvised weaponry, and hand-to-hand combat techniques to neutralize the enemy threat. Private Rel raised her hand. Captain, with respect, they have our pulse rifles and plasma grenades. We have... what, our fists? Tara walked over to stand directly in front of the young Marine. Private, what's the first principle of Fang unit training? Rel straightened. The weapon is an extension of the warrior, not the warrior an extension of the weapon. Precisely. The Zarnak think they've disarmed us because they've taken our guns. But they haven't taken our minds. Tara turned to address the entire unit again. They haven't taken our training, and most importantly, they haven't taken the one advantage we have over every other unit in the Alliance. What's that, Captain? Someone asked. Tara's smile turned predatory. We're absolutely insane enough to see this as an opportunity. A ripple of laughter broke the tension, and Tara could see determination replacing fear in the eyes of her Marines. Monroe, I want inventory of everything we can use as weapons. Jax, work on restoring at least short-range communications. Rel, you've been modifying hand-to-hand techniques for low gravity. Now you get to test them. The rest of you, break into your assault teams and start adapting your standard tactics for close-quarter combat. As the unit dispersed to their tasks with renewed purpose, Monroe approached Tara. This is crazy, you know, he said quietly. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and completely cut off. Exactly, Tara replied. They'll never see it coming. Over the next 48 hours, Fang unit transformed. The outpost, once a standard Alliance installation, became a fortress designed specifically for close-quarter ambushes and traps. Every Marine contributed their specialties. Sergeant Wilkes, the unit's demolitions expert, created rudimentary explosives using chemicals from the medical bay and engineering section. They wouldn't match the power of military-grade detonators, but they would create enough confusion to provide tactical advantages. Lieutenant Patel, their stealth specialist, developed camouflage techniques using the local mineral dust that would make Marines nearly invisible in Eltheron's shadowy terrain. Private Rel proved her worth a dozen times over, designing makeshift weapons including a particularly effective trap she called the Bear Claw, fashioned from salvaged shuttle hull fragments. When triggered, it would snap shut with enough force to incapacitate even a Zarnak warrior in their reinforced armor. Terra oversaw it all, adjusting their outpost defense strategy to maximize their new capabilities. She knew the Zarnak would return, and when they did, Fang Unit would be ready, not as conventional Marines, but as something the enemy had never faced before. The first contact came 3 days after the initial infiltration. A Zarnak scouting party approached the outpost's western entrance, clearly expecting to find a demoralized, helpless human unit. What they found instead was emptiness. The entrance appeared abandoned, all external lights disabled. When the Zarnak scouts entered the airlock, there was no resistance. They advanced cautiously into the main corridor, weapons ready, their elongated reptilian forms moving with predatory grace. The corridor was dark, illuminated only by the eerie emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the walls. The first scout disappeared without a sound. One moment he was leading the formation, the next he was simply gone, as if the shadows themselves had swallowed him whole. The second scout barely had time to raise an alarm before a ceiling panel dropped open and Monroe descended upon him, a makeshift garrote wire in his hands. The Zarnak fired wildly, the pulse from the stolen Alliance weapon illuminating the corridor in brief. Blinding flashes, but hitting nothing. By the time the remaining scouts retreated, 4 of their number had vanished without a trace. Back in the command center, Terra listened to Monroe's report with satisfaction. "Any casualties on our side?" she asked. Jenkins took a graze to the shoulder, but nothing serious. Monroe replied, "The Zarnak never expected us to be on the offensive. They were completely unprepared for an ambush." "And the captured scouts?" "Secure in the maintenance level. 3 unconscious, 1 awake but not talking." Terra nodded. "I'll handle the interrogation myself." The conscious Zarnak scout was secured to a chair in what had once been a storage room. Unlike humans, the Zarnak had evolved from reptilian ancestors, with scaled skin in mottled gray-green patterns and vertically slitted pupils that gave them superior vision in darkness. This particular individual was smaller than most, with lighter coloration that suggested youth or perhaps a different regional variant. Terra entered alone, carrying nothing that could be perceived as a weapon. She needed information, not intimidation. "I am Captain Terra Nash of the Human Alliance Fang Unit," she said in the simplified trade language used for interspecies communication. "You are being held as a prisoner of war under Alliance protocols." The Zarnak remained silent, yellow eyes tracking her movements. "You have 2 choices," Terra continued. "Cooperate and be treated according to Alliance prisoner regulations, or remain silent and be held in isolation until this conflict is resolved." After a long moment, the Zarnak spoke, voice rasping with the characteristic hiss of their species. "I am Varen, 3rd Echelon Scout. I will not betray my command." Terra nodded, pulling up a chair to sit opposite the prisoner. "I respect your loyalty, Varen, but I'm not asking you to betray anyone. I simply want to understand. Understand what human? Why steal our weapons instead of simply killing us in our sleep? It would have been easier." Varen's scaled lips pulled back in what might have been a smile or a grimace. "You assume much about what the High Command wants? Then enlighten me." The Zarnak studied her for several seconds before responding. "The weapons are secondary, a convenience. The true objective was to demonstrate human weakness." "Weakness? Without your technology, you are nothing. Soft creatures, easily broken." Varen's eyes narrowed. "The High Command believes that by stripping humans of their weapons, their extensions, we reveal the truth. That you are not worthy adversaries, merely clever animals relying on tools you barely understand." Terra absorbed this, keeping her expression neutral despite the anger building inside her. "And what do you believe, Varen?" The question seemed to surprise the Zarnak scout. "What I believe is irrelevant. Not to me." Another long silence followed before Varen spoke again, voice lower. "I believe the High Command underestimates humans. Your adaptability is concerning." Terra smiled. "High praise from a predator species." "Not praise. Observation." Varen shifted slightly. "Your unit's response was not anticipated. The scouts were expected to find you cowering, awaiting rescue or execution. Sorry to disappoint. I am beginning to think that General Kraxel's assessment of human psychology is flawed," Varen admitted, then immediately looked as though he regretted revealing the name. Terra filed away the information. A general's involvement suggested this operation had high-level approval. "Tell me about Kraxel." Varen's posture stiffened. "I have said too much already." "Perhaps, but consider this. Varen, if Kraxel's assessment of humans is flawed, what other errors might he be making? Errors that could cost Zarnak lives unnecessarily?" The seed of doubt planted. Terra left the prisoner to consider her words. She had what she needed, confirmation that this was a psychological operation rather than a standard military attack, and the name of the commander responsible. As she walked back to the command center, an idea began to form. If the Zarnak wanted to make a statement about human dependence on technology, perhaps it was time for Fang Unit to make a counter-statement of their own. The next week saw a series of increasingly bold guerrilla operations by Fang Unit, rather than hiding in their outpost. Terra led small teams on offensive missions against Zarnak patrols and eventually against their forward operating bases. Each mission followed the same pattern: swift, silent approaches, unconventional attacks using improvised weapons and the environment itself, and tactical withdrawals that left the Zarnak confused and demoralized. After the third successful raid, during which Fang Unit captured another 6 Zarnak soldiers without suffering any casualties, Terra noticed a change in their prisoner Varen. The scout had been watching the humans' operations with increasing interest, occasionally asking questions about their tactics and training. "Your warriors fight without fear," Varen observed as Terra brought him his daily ration. "Even knowing they face superior weapons." "Superior is a relative term," Terra replied. "A weapon is only as effective as the mind wielding it." "You truly believe you can win this conflict?" Terra considered the question. "Win is also relative. Can 24 Marines defeat an entire Zarnak battle group through direct confrontation? No. But can we demonstrate that taking our weapons doesn't render us helpless? Absolutely." Varen's scaled head tilted slightly. "General Kraxel will not accept such humiliation. He will escalate." "I'm counting on it," Terra said. "In fact, I'm hoping you might help us when he does." Varen's vertical pupils contracted to thin slits. "You ask me to betray my people?" "I ask you to prevent unnecessary bloodshed," Terra countered. "This entire operation is based on a false premise that humans are dependent on their technology. Help us prove that premise wrong, and perhaps we can end this conflict without further losses on either side." She left Varen to consider her proposal, knowing the Zarnak needed time to reconcile loyalty to his command with what he had witnessed of Fang Unit's capabilities. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Private Rel, while testing a new variation of her bear claw trap in the southern quadrant, discovered a hidden Zarnak communications relay. "It's well camouflaged, Captain," she reported, showing Terra the scans she'd taken. "But it's definitely transmitting regular pulses toward a location about 20 kilometers east of here." Terra studied the data. "Good work, Rel. This could be our link to their main base." With this new information, Terra developed a daring plan. Rather than continuing their small-scale raids, Fang unit would strike directly at what they now suspected was General Kraxel's command center, a hidden base built into one of Eltheron's larger craters. The plan required precise timing, perfect execution, and one additional element, Varen's cooperation. To Terra's surprise, the Zarnak scout agreed more readily than she had anticipated. General Kraxel's strategy dishonors the warrior tradition, Varen explained. True victory comes from defeating an enemy at their strongest, not from exploiting perceived weakness. With Varen's knowledge of Zarnak security protocols and patrol schedules, Terra was able to finalize a comprehensive assault plan. It would be risky, perhaps the most dangerous mission Fang unit had ever attempted, but if successful, it would not only recover their stolen weapons, but deliver a devastating psychological blow to the Zarnak High Command. The night before the operation, Terra found Monroe in the makeshift gym they'd established, working through a series of combat forms with a metal staff fashioned from a support strut. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, picking up a similar staff. Monroe paused, sweat glistening on his dark skin. "Just making sure I'm ready for tomorrow. It's been a while since I faced a Zarnak in direct combat." Terra nodded, beginning her own sequence of movements. Having second thoughts about the plan? Not about the plan. Monroe executed a complex strike pattern, the staff whirling in his hands. About Varen. Can we trust him? It was the question Terra had been asking herself since the Zarnak had agreed to help. "I think so. He seems genuinely disillusioned with Kraxel's methods. And if it's a trap?" Terra smiled grimly. "Then we do what Fang unit always does, adapt and overcome." The two officers continued their practice in companionable silence, each preparing in their own way for what might be their final mission. Operation Bare Knuckle began at dawn. 3 teams of 8 Marines each, led by Terra, Monroe, and Lieutenant Jax, approached the Zarnak base from different vectors. Using the low gravity and rough terrain to their advantage, they moved silently across Eltheron's surface, their makeshift armor, fashioned from composite materials salvaged from their outpost, blending with the moon's gray-brown landscape. Varen, secured in Monroe's team but providing guidance, had given them the patrol schedules and sensor blind spots. If his information was accurate, they would reach the base perimeter undetected. Terra's team was the first to encounter resistance, a Zarnak sentry positioned on a ridge overlooking the approach to the main crater, before the alien could raise an alarm. Sergeant Wilkes dispatched him with a thrown blade improvised from a cooling fin. "First blood to us," Terra murmured into a short-range communicator. "Maintain stealth protocol." The teams converged at the base's secondary entrance, a maintenance airlock that Varen had identified as minimally guarded. Lieutenant Jax's team secured the outer door while Terra's specialists worked on bypassing the security protocols. Once inside, they moved through the Zarnak facility like ghosts, neutralizing isolated guards with swift, silent efficiency. The Zarnak, accustomed to relying on their superior technology and weapons, never expected an enemy to penetrate their stronghold using nothing but hand-to-hand combat skills and primitive tools. As they approached the central command hub, however, resistance stiffened. A squad of Zarnak warriors intercepted Jax's team in a narrow corridor, and the ensuing fight alerted the base to their presence. "Stealth compromised," Jax reported, the sounds of combat clear in the background. "They're mobilizing their main force." Terra made a split-second decision. "Execute Phase 2. Monroe, secure the armory. Jax, hold your position and keep them occupied. My team will proceed to the command center," with the element of surprise lost. Terra's team abandoned subtlety for speed. They charged through the corridors, engaging any Zarnak they encountered with the full range of their unconventional combat skills. Private Rel proved particularly effective, her modified low-gravity combat techniques allowing her to literally run along walls and ceilings, dropping onto Zarnak warriors from unexpected angles. The aliens, despite their superior strength and natural armor, found themselves outmaneuvered by the humans' adaptability. Terra led the assault on the command center, bursting through the reinforced doors with a makeshift explosive created by Sergeant Wilkes. Inside, surrounded by holographic displays showing the status of the entire base, stood a Zarnak warrior larger than any Terra had seen before. His scales were darker, almost black, with red markings that indicated high military rank. "General Kraxel, I presume," Terra said, advancing into the room with her team fanning out behind her. The Zarnak general turned slowly, yellow eyes widening at the sight of humans in his command center. "Impossible," he hissed. "Clearly not," Terra replied. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." Kraxel's surprised expression morphed into one of rage. "You prove nothing with this desperation. Without your precious weapons, you resort to primitive tactics, confirming our assessment of your species' weakness." Terra laughed, the sound echoing in the metallic chamber. "Is that what you think this is? Desperation?" She stepped closer to the general. "This is adaptation. This is evolution. This is what makes humans the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not our weapons, but our minds." Kraxel's hand moved toward a sidearm holstered at his waist, one of the stolen Alliance pulse pistols. "I wouldn't," Terra warned. "Even if you managed to draw before my team neutralized you, it would only prove my point. The mighty Zarnak general, needing a human weapon to defeat a human opponent." Kraxel hesitated, then dropped his hand from the holster. "You wish to face me in unarmed combat? Very well. When I crush your fragile body, your Marines will surrender." Terra motioned for her team to step back, creating a makeshift arena in the center of the command room. "When I defeat you, you will order your forces to stand down and return all stolen Alliance property." The Zarnak general was nearly 2 meters tall, his muscular form covered in natural armor that human strikes would struggle to penetrate. By any objective measure, Terra was outmatched in terms of raw, physical power. But as the two commanders circled each other, Terra recalled the words she had spoken to her unit days earlier. "They haven't taken our minds." Kraxel struck first, a powerful sweeping blow that would have broken Terra's ribs if it had connected. But she was already moving, using Eltheron's lower gravity to launch herself over the Zarnak's extended arm. As she passed above him, she drove her elbow down into the junction between his neck and shoulder, one of the few vulnerable points in Zarnak physiology that Varen had identified. The general staggered but recovered quickly, spinning to face her with a snarl. "You are well informed about our weaknesses. Knowledge is another weapon you failed to steal," Terra replied, maintaining her distance. The fight continued, a deadly dance of strikes and counters. Kraxel's superior strength and natural armor allowed him to absorb blows that would have incapacitated a human. But Terra's speed and precision targeting kept her from sustaining serious injury. As the battle progressed, Terra noticed Kraxel's breathing becoming more labored. The Zarnak evolved on a high-oxygen world. Eltheron's thin atmosphere, combined with the exertion of combat, was taking its toll on the general's stamina. Terra, on the other hand, had been training in Eltheron's challenging environment for months. Her body had adapted to function efficiently despite the oxygen limitations. She pressed her advantage, increasing the pace of her attacks, forcing Kraxel to expend more energy defending himself. When she saw his movements begin to slow, she executed the maneuver she had been setting up since the beginning of their duel, a modified neck lock taught to every Fang Unit Marine during their first week of survival training. Using a low-gravity flip to gain momentum, Terra launched herself onto Kraxel's back, her legs locking around his torso while her arms secured a precise hold on his neck. The pressure wasn't enough to cause permanent damage, but it restricted blood flow to the Zarnak's brain while simultaneously compressing sensitive nerve clusters. Kraxel thrashed, trying to dislodge her, but Terra maintained the hold with grim determination. Gradually, The general's struggles weakened until, with a final shudder, he slumped to his knees. "Yield," Terra commanded, maintaining the pressure. For a moment, it seemed as though Kraxel would choose unconsciousness over surrender. Then, with a rasp barely audible to the watching Marines, he spoke. "I yield." Terra released her hold and stepped back, ready to defend herself if the general reneged on his surrender. But Kraxel remained kneeling, his proud posture now diminished. "Order your forces to stand down," Terra instructed. With obvious reluctance, Kraxel activated the base-wide communication system and gave the command. Throughout the facility, the sounds of combat ceased as Zarnak warriors complied with their general's order. Just then, Monroe's voice came through Terra's communicator. "Armory secured. Captain, all Alliance weapons accounted for." "Well done." "Sergeant," Terra replied, "begin distribution to our teams." She turned back to Kraxel, who was watching her with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. "Your operation failed. General, instead of proving human weakness, you've demonstrated our greatest strength, the ability to turn adversity into advantage." The aftermath of Operation Bare Knuckle extended far beyond the recovery of Fang Unit's weapons. With access to the Zarnak Command Center's communication array, Terra was able to re-establish contact with Alliance headquarters, providing them with valuable intelligence gathered from Kraxel's databases. The Zarnak High Command, upon learning of Kraxel's defeat at the hands of supposedly disarmed humans, ordered an immediate withdrawal from the Eltheron sector. The psychological impact of Fang Unit's victory, achieving what should have been impossible through sheer adaptability and unconventional thinking, had shaken the Zarnak military hierarchy's confidence in their strategy against humanity. For Terra and her Marines, the return to the Alliance was met with accolades and recognition. Their mission was classified as one of the most successful psychological operations in the history of human-Zarnak conflict. Varen, the Zarnak scout who had aided them, requested and was granted political asylum within Alliance territory. His insights into Zarnak military culture would prove invaluable in future diplomatic negotiations. 6 months after the events on Eltheron, Captain Terra Nash stood before a new class of recruits at the Alliance Marine Corps training facility on Earth. The young men and women before her represented the next generation of Marines, eager to prove themselves worthy of the uniform. "The first thing you need to understand," Terra began, pacing before the assembled recruits, "is that a weapon is merely a tool. Your primary asset, the one thing that can never be taken from you, is this." She tapped her temple. As she spoke, Sergeant Monroe and Private Rell moved quietly through the ranks of recruits, methodically collecting their training weapons. "What are they doing, our captain?" one bold recruit asked as his pulse rifle was taken away. Terra smiled, the expression reminiscent of a predator. "Initiating Phase 3 of your training. Recruit, consider it a test of adaptability." As understanding dawned on the faces before her, Terra continued, "The enemy will always seek to exploit what they perceive as your weaknesses. Your job is to ensure that even at your most vulnerable, you remain dangerous." She nodded to Monroe and Rell, who had completed their collection of the training weapons. "Now, let's see what you're truly made of." The legend of Fang Unit and their unarmed victory became a cornerstone of Alliance military doctrine. While technology and weapons remained important, equal emphasis was placed on adaptability, unconventional thinking, and the ability to overcome seemingly impossible odds through innovation and mental resilience. As for the Zarnak, they would eventually return to the negotiating table, approaching humanity with newfound respect, the species that could win a war with their bare hands, they realized, was one better faced as an ally than an enemy. And on distant outposts throughout Alliance territory, Marines would occasionally walk into their armories to find all weapons mysteriously missing, replaced by a simple note. Hand-to-hand training in effect, adapt and overcome. Those who understood the reference would smile. roll up their sleeves, and prepare to prove once again that the true strength of humanity lay not in their weapons, but in their indomitable spirit and endless capacity for adaptation.